Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to thank you for watching. In this episode, we shall be looking at the reason why the country of the Democratic Republic of the Congo requires a Marshall Plan to transform the country's economy and the prosperity in terms of growth. From different perspectives, to understand this video, we shall be going back to time to explore some very important characteristics from the last decades of development and also looking at the big push to the prosperity of the DRC. More importantly, why the country should focus on institutions over infrastructure. We shall close this by looking at the preparation to this particular push and how a Marshall Plan for the DRC could look like in terms of numbers as this country intends to move away from its current challenges. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, however, should be noted, is one of the most mineral-rich countries in the world. However, we do not sugarcoat things here. The DRC is one of the poorest countries in the world. Looking at specifics, we will examine this like never before seen. So we encourage you to watch this video to the end for clarity and better understanding. So without any more delay, let's just dive straight into it. Recently, as of June, in previous years, the remains of Patrice Lumumba, Democratic Republic of the Congo's first Prime Minister, were repatriated from Belgium to his native land, 61 years after his assassination. If Lumumba were running alive to the countries today, he will be shocked. His prophecy of a prosperous Democratic Republic of the Congo, which he penned in his final letter to his wife, has not been fulfilled, despite the abundance of natural, economic and human and also cultural resources in the country. Instead, over decades, an abysmal series of obstacles have been repeatedly hindered the country's development. A poorly managed decolonization process by Belgium, multiple rebellions, and a failure to promote good governance, combined with living in a state of war since 1996, particularly in the East, have resulted in profound setbacks in health, education, the economy, society, and also governance. Moving ahead, these obstacles led to deep and pervasive effects on Congolese society, and that also makes a good case for massive assistance. There is a model already in place for the United States and other friends of DRC Congo around the world to follow the 1948 to 1951 European Recovery Program, otherwise known as the Marshall Plan, advanced by the United States Secretary of State George C. Marshall. The plan gave countries that were devastated by World War II mostly donations to restore industry, support agriculture, and increase international trade. The United States appropriated over $13.3 billion for over 4 years. In the end, the plan helped Western and Southern European countries boost industrial production by 55% and average gross national product by just over 33%, laying the foundation for a prosperous Europe. Since then, the expression Marshall Plan has been used to refer to massive assistance or economic stimulus programs worldwide, the latest case being the European Recovery Plan. In looking at different perspectives, comparable assistance focused on improving governance could help the DRC Congo develop while laying a similar foundation for a prosperous African Great Lakes region and even African continent. Yet, achieving this goal will require focusing the plan more on building strong institutions and less on building infrastructure. The beloved child of many development partners, then United States President Barack Obama emphasized a need for updated partnership programs with Africa in a July 2009 speech in Accra, Ghana, declaring that the true sign of success is not whether there are sources of perpetual aid that help people scrap by. It is whether we are partner in building this capacity for transforming and also including the transformation of the change. If you look at different areas with regards to the DRC Congo, talking about the decades of lost development, a bit like in the 1960s and 1970s, military conflict and violence are entrenched in the DRC. The death toll of nearly weekly attacks by the Allied Democratic Forces of the ADF and the insurgent groups with ties to Islamic State of Iraq and also Al-Shabaab ISIS practically tripled between 2020 and 2022. Furthermore, the militant March 23 movement, after a deceptive slumber, has occupied the strategic town of Bunagana since June, after former President Mobutu Sese Seko 3-decade single-party ruled and former President Joseph Kabila tumultuous terms from 2001 to 2019. Congolese people hope that their political class will mobilize in favor of development. This has not yet fully happened, and far from rally the much-needed unity required to end the conflict in the East, political parties seem preoccupied with the 2023 presidential election. Moving ahead and looking at different perspectives, despite recent social and economic progress, notably a solid annual gross domestic product growth rate that has averaged above 5% over the past 10 years, many long-term per capita indicators have worsened since the 1970s. According to the World Bank, electricity consumption per capita of 159 kilowatt hours in 1972 and 109 kilowatt hours as of 2015, and the numbers of hospital beds per thousand people, just 3.2 in 1975 against 0.8 in 2006, have dropped. Gross domestic products, the GDP per capita remains less than half of the value in the 1970s, looking at 1,372 to just in 1974 to versus 518 as of 2021 based on constant information. According to United Nations Office for Coordination for Humanitarian Affairs, 4.2 million people, including 2.1 million children under the years of 5, or suffer from severe malnutrition. Roughly 6 million people are internally displaced, and 74,000 cases of sexual and gender-based violence were reported over the period, with the majority occurring in the eastern conflict-torn part of the country. Those economic and social indicators are a sign of unhealthy ecosystem that cannot support economic development and also contributed to factors including political instability, wars, and lack of economic diversification, and over-reliance on natural resources, and the consequences of a conflict economy in which investment is deemed by the uncertainty caused by wartime disruptions to local and national activities, and Congolese don't benefit from the revenues created by their natural resources. These factors make it difficult to uproot corruption, mismanagement, and also the state captured even more than half a century after the DRC independence, despite recent efforts such as reforms within the central banks and publications of the mining contract. Thus, the country's lack of development, caused by its political, social, and economic condition, is likely to be long-lasting. Moving forward, the big push with regards to prosperity is important. In his farewell letter, Lumumba was optimistic about the destiny of his country because he believed that the DRC could overcome its afflictions, just as other countries that have experienced war and also political instability have done. Germany experienced such a period of economic and social devastation and adversity after World War II. In 1947, industrial output was only 1/3 and food production was 1/2 of the country's 1938 level. Nearly 1/5 of the country's housing has been destroyed over the course of the war. Inflation had resulted in a wave of poverty, while the country's price control fueled the expansion of the black market. But today, Germany has become a formidable economic force. The reasons for the German economic miracle, or the Wirtschaftswunder, are also a subject of debate among economists, but some credited the Marshall Plan as a very important instrument. The initial Marshall Plan and its variants worldwide are in line with economic Paul Rosenstein-Rotham, the big push to point out theory that massive reforms and investments are more helpful than gradual actions in overcoming obstacles that prelude development in underdeveloped economies. In other words, a big push is required to undo the initials of a stagnated economy. Such a big push would help the Democratic Republic of the Congo get out of its root, given the country's numerous and multifaceted economic, social, and security challenges. But the push must address the real issues that Congolese faces. If you are new to this channel, we will encourage you to subscribe and share our videos with your different network. If you consider the institutions over infrastructure, which should be a very important drive and the focus for the people of the DRC, Investment plans for African countries often focus on spending in areas like infrastructure and equipment, and ultimately, some costly and not terribly used by white elephants. A Marshall Plan for the Democratic Republic of the Congo should avoid falling into those two pitfalls by taking a completely different approach, focusing on institutions rather than infrastructure. After all, infrastructural projects in the DRC easily mobilize resources from a variety of public and private stakeholders. The Emirati company DP World, for example, is investing hundreds of millions of US dollars over decades in the construction and management of the DRC's first deep-sea port in Banana due to economic potential there. Beyond that case, the country's infrastructural potential and needs are so immense that all that governments will have to do is to design bankable projects and abide to conditions set by international private or public partners. Conversely, commitment to lasting and in-depth institutions reforms is far below what the DRC and other poor nations need, because a reform institution is less immediately visible than a bridge or a school. In addition to that, reforming or even creating institutions is more time-consuming, more complex, and dependent on combination of success factors such as overcoming vested interest and tailoring institutions to sociological reliance. It involves mapping and optimizing process, investing in training and paying civil servants better, but also limiting abuses vis-a-vis users of public services who are often not considered as customers but rather as sheep that can be sheared mercilessly. Overcoming the DRC's development obstacles will require a substantial investment in the country's institutions. Strong institutions are the key to turning the DRC's immense potential into tangible results, enabling the country to fish for itself instead of being offered fish by other countries. A DRC with strong institutions will see civil servants better paid, unbiased decisions from the courts, vulnerable groups protected by the police, natural resources and projects managed without corruption, better equipped schools, and also social safety nets that protects most vulnerable. If we look at concluding this, talking about the push, initially working in designing the Marshall Plan should start with an in-depth inclusive discussions among Congolese and between Congo and the partners about governance mechanism of such initiatives. This initial discussion is essential because of the colossal sums at stake and also the controversies that have plagued Congolese infrastructural projects. In order to avoid problems associated with DRC poor public finance management and so to increase the likelihood that plans succeeded, this discussion should also structure around strengthening its absorptive capacity, the amount of foreign aid that the DRC can use productively. The DRC has faced difficulties in quickly implementing quality investment projects and also ensuring that every dollar invested reaches its intended beneficiary. Shaping a new normal will require improvement in three areas. Preparation for the Marshall Plan should include the recruitment and training of motivated and skilled people who can effectively design and manage reform projects in the long term. The DRC Congo must establish a strong, more efficient control mechanism to ensure good fiduciary and also management of the plan's project in order to avoid misappropriation, collusion, and also corruption. Such practices have been long battlefield public contracts, tenders, and also public funds management. It will be necessary to meticulously prepare the various projects and also investment plans in order to avoid mistakes of the past, including some famous white elephants, and also to guarantee adequate social impact. To do this, leaders taking part in the plan should adopt an experimental approach in which they run small-scale test projects to better understand and correct their shortcomings before deploying them through the country. The big question here is, looking at the Marshall Plan for the DRC Congo, how much should an institutional Marshall Plan for the DRC Congo cost? Let's start with a linear method to evaluate the regional aspect. From 1948 to 1952, 16 countries received a total of $13.3 billion US dollars, representing roughly 159 billion as of 2022. Distributing that among the total 1948 population, approximately 278 million people of the countries that received this aid, yields a per capita endowment of $588 in today's total to match the original Marshall Plan. That will add up to approximately 55 billion for the Democratic Republic of the Congo and its estimated over 95.2 million people. The amount is practically the size of the Democratic Republic of the Congo's GDP and more than 10 times what it received in annual official development assistance. It may seem enormous, but that is not the case considering the scale of the DRC's weak social indicators and immense needs. The sum is about 1/3 more than the $40 billion the United States Congress committed this year with regards to the aid in Ukraine in its fight against Russia, and represents roughly 3 to 4 years of expenditures for the Washington DC or the Chicago. Looking forward, the spillovers from the Marshall Plan will also be transformative. Those resources will help provide the big push that the country of DRC needs to fight against the rise of the ADF in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, meet its development challenges, rebuild, and also above all, consolidate its governance and move from a cyclical, natural resources-led growth to a more balanced and sustainable momentum supported by strong institutions. A Marshall Plan-style investment could quickly transform the DRC, which is projected to become the world's 8th most populous country by 2050, into one of the global's most dynamic markets. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, with its connections to the world-covered battery supply chain, could also become a home for the green industry, with jobs available for youths in all sectors of radically transforming the economy. Ultimately, an institutional central Marshall Plan would drastically transform the DRC over the next decade, helping new generations of Congolese achieve Lumumba's vision of a bright future for the country and the region and Africa at large. Hopefully, we've been able to inform you with regards to why the DRC need a Marshall Plan to transform its economic prosperity and the nature of the country. Let us know what you think with regard to this particular plan for the DRC. And why do you think DRC, with its huge mineral deposit, is still struggling and is one of the countries in the region that still need economic miracle to transform its age? We want to thank you for watching. If you are new here, we encourage you to watch some of our informative videos. We are looking forward to meeting you in our next episode. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.